Hey, hello everyone, I'm Chris Taylor and welcome to my happy little studio in downtown Muncie, Indiana. It's just down the road from the Bob Ross Experience in Minnetrista Museum and Gardens. If I'm not painting or teaching workshops there, chances are you'll find me here. I'm glad you could join us today. I thought we'd just do a happy little winter scene inspired by one of Bob Ross's paintings, Winter Frost. So we'll have them run all the colors across the bottom of your screen. And let's get up here. I've already covered my canvas with a thin, even coat of liquid white. And so it's slick, it's ready to go, so let's go. We're gonna start today by just taking a 1-inch brush. And I'm gonna pull that 1-inch brush through a little cadmium yellow. I'm gonna reach over here and get a least little bit of bright red. I want a nice orangey yellow color. I'm just gonna mix that right on the brush. Both sides, load that good, give it a good tap. First thing we have to do today is determine where we're going to have a nice little sun. And so I'm going to see one right here. And I'm just going to go in, paint a little orange glow in the sky. Just like that, we've got us a nice little sun. I'm going to pick up another 1-inch brush. I'm going to pull it through some titanium white. I'm going to reach over here and get the least little bit of alizarin crimson, just looking for a nice pink color. Not too bright. About like that. Same thing, just loading the 1-inch brush on both sides and then tapping to make sure I have even distribution. I'm going to go maybe about 1 inch away from the sun. And I'm going to start doing little X strokes all the way around where my sun is. And that color is mixing with the liquid white. And I really encourage, as Bob did, the little X strokes. Exaggerated version here. X strokes. And then you can start blending that right back into where the yellow is. It's going to pick up a little of that yellow, that orange, and that's okay. Just don't bring a lot of it back into the pink. There we go, something about like that. I'm going to pick up just a little more paint on my brush. And we'll get in there about like that. We're going to come back and blend this with a different color in a second. And while we've got some of that on the brush, let's just scrub a little color down here at the bottom. We don't care too much at the moment where that's going to be. We'll probably have a little water in here. And so today we're just scrubbing it in with the brush. We don't really care too much. Just dropping in some base color right now. All right. So without cleaning the brush, I've got that nice white alizarin crimson color going. I'm going to reach up and get just a little touch of phthalo blue and add to it. Just a little bit. It'll eat your world up now, as Bob says. It's a very strong color. A little more crimson, a little more phthalo blue. Just trying to make a little lavender color. A nice little lavender color. Maybe just a hint of more phthalo blue in there. Little phthalo blue, titanium white, alizarin crimson. Looking for a nice lavender color. There we go. Something about like that. That's the same dirty 1-inch brush. I'm just loading that on. All right, let's go back up here to the canvas. Same idea now. We're going to go and put little X strokes around. All right. Start at the top, work in the corners, and let that color blend with the liquid white that's already on the canvas. All right. I'm going to carry that on out and go back and pick up a little more paint on my palette. There we go. Something about like that. Whew, that's a bright sky today. Happy little sky. Still got that color on the brush. Just going to go down here. Pull from the outsides, scrub it in. A little bit different water today than what you've seen Bob do, pulling from the outsides. We're just trying to get a lot of that color in here on this canvas right now. And we'll blend it all out in a little bit. A little bit more over here from this side. There. Perfect. That's what we want. Get a little of that sky reflecting down into the water, whatever this becomes down here. We'll find out as we keep going. All right. Gonna go back in. Just gonna work this a little bit. Just little X strokes coming right up to the edge of the pink. And then I'm gonna reach up into that same color, and I'm just gonna get a little hint of Van Dyke brown. Just kind of wanna gray it, darken it just a bit, mix it into that color right on the brush. And now we're gonna go in and darken our corners with this darker color. And what the dark does in the corners is it forces your eye into the center of the painting. And as you know, we're all about the illusion of depth and distance. And by having those corners darker, you're automatically forcing the viewer's eye a little deeper into the painting. All right. And just clean the brush off down here. Just cleaning the brush off with that brown color. Okay, I've got a lot of brushes going today, so I don't have to spend a lot of time cleaning my brushes. But I'm going to take a clean, dry 2-inch brush, and then we're going to work on blending this sky out. So I'm going to start here, and just little X strokes. The harder you press, the softer it becomes. And blend outward from the sun. Don't bring the dark back into the yellow or the pink. We're blending outward. And just by doing that, look at how that comes together. Just by doing that. Hold on to my easel a little bit more for me here. And I'm using those same X strokes, but I'm just blending that sky. I'm going to reach into my bucket with my beater brush at the bottom. Just going to shake off, just beat off the excess. I'm going to go back in, I'm going to start again. And you can blend this to any degree of softness that you want. And when you've got a good sky the way you like it, just take those long horizontal strokes very lightly across the whole canvas. I'm going to do the same down here, pulling from the outside in now. Just kind of blend those colors together a little bit. All right, just like that. We've got a pretty happy little sky in there. Now we're going to use the paintbrush, as Bob says, that your mom gave you, your finger. I'm just going to put my finger into a little of the titanium white. And right up there in this glow, I'm going to finger paint a sun. And just by using my finger, I want to try to make it a good circle. And I'm putting a little sun right in the middle there. There we go. All right. Let me wipe my finger off. Now, if you were to go in and blend this with a brush, you're going to kind of smear it. but the value is already in the canvas. So just take a palette knife, watch right here. Go up to it and then just scoop it off. Scoop that paint off, whatever that you had that was sticking out. And then I've got a clean 1-inch brush. And I can go in there and just kind of very softly, one hair and some air here, as Bob would say. Give it a little spin, kind of blend it right back into my sky, and then very lightly right across the top. And just like that, we've got a nice little sun in our sky. All right, let's mix this up a dark color here. Just gonna work myself a little space on my palette. Bob had a nice big old mountain in this kind of painting that he did today, so we're gonna do the same. I'm gonna take some Prussian blue and get a good chunk of midnight black, about equal parts of the Prussian blue, midnight black, and alizarin crimson. I'm gonna get a little more alizarin crimson. That's gonna mix us up a nice dark mountain color. If you wanted a little more purple, which I do today, add a little more crimson. If you wanted a little more blue, add more of the Prussian blue. There we go. Nice dark color. Just using my big knife here, whipping it up a few times, just like that. I'm going to wipe my knife off on a paper towel. Have a clean, dry knife. I'm going to go in there and load our little roll of paint. Just like that. A little roll of paint on the edge of the knife. And now you have to make the big decisions, right? Another one of your bravery tests. Where does your mountain live today? So in my world, I see a peak right here under the sun, and I'm just going up and touching with my knife. And I'm just worried about the top edge right now. Could care less what's going on down here. I'm just putting in some color down here. I'm worried about that top edge right now. Go back and reload my knife, a little roll of paint. Be thinking where that comes from here. I see another big peak right in here. And it comes right down like that, right in front of that other one. I'm just really shaping that edge of my mountain. And you want this nice firm edge at the top. Down here, just put some color in it. We're going to scrape it all off anyway. Maybe over here, another little peak that comes out about right there. Maybe that peak just comes on out this way a little ways. Something like that. So now, still using the knife, I'm just going to scrape away all that excess paint. This is going to help you with the next step too. Good, looking good. I see in my world, I think I want another little peak to come up in here just a little bit. That's the beauty of the wet on wet painting technique. You literally start to see things in your mind. You can add a mountain, you can move a mountain. Just like that. All right. I'm taking another 2-inch brush. And now you really start to shape that mountain. You can shape it how you want. So take a 2-inch brush, clean, dry 2-inch brush. I'm just going to put it right below the edge and kind of wiggle up to it. And then I'm just going to pull. So it kind of fades away. And as you've watched Bob before, this is where you can start to see the angles of your mountain with the brush strokes. And just like that, you can go up here and pull that one right in front of the other one. I just like to put my brush up and kind of wiggle it up to the edge like that, and then pull. A little bit coming this way. That angle on the left side of the mountain. Got a little peak there that I added in the back. Pull that one out. This goes this way. And when you're painting mountains, it's all about the angle, right? All about the angles that you create. And this is really a chance to shape that mountain without much commitment yet. You can go back in. Down here, you're just going to use those same little X strokes that we used on the sky. So that mountain just kind of blends off into the distance. Lift gently with it, take out any brush strokes. I'm going to get a little more paint right there. I want that one to be a little darker in the front. There we go. And just like that, we put a little mountain in. And you want that to just blend right off into the distance. All right. Now for the fun part, let's put some highlights on that mountain. I'm just going to clean up a little bit of my titanium white, pull it out flat. Just so it's not so cold, I'm going to go down here and get about a chocolate chip size of bright red. It's a very powerful color. Just mix that into my white. There we go. I don't want it to be too bright white. And you can leave it kind of marbled. Get a little more white in there. There we go. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Pull it out flat. And cut across the little roll of paint. And then, as Bob said in this episode, just go up here and touch and relax. Touch and relax, and let the paint just flow off the canvas. I'm going to go right up here on this peak. I'm going to feel my paint hit the canvas. And then I'm just going to pull it on down. I'm going to reload my knife. And that color is beautiful. I don't know if you can see it on the camera as well. But it's got that nice little shade of pink coming right off the sun here, which is awesome. And then you can just, ooh, look at that. And then you can just go in and break it. You're just pulling real lightly. You're always wiping your knife off, wiping off any of the excess, and then going back and reloading that reloading that palette knife. And you can pull as many of these little doers through right here that you want. And then over here, this peak, same thing. Touch, relax, and just let the canvas take what it wants. I'm wiping my knife before I reload every time. And just like that, I'm dropping in a beautiful little mountain, a little snow, a little highlights, got some browns coming through in the back and the pinks of the snow and the white on the front. And you can go back and you can just start to wiggle this knife around, let it break, and start to build all these beautiful little highlights on your mountain. Little roll of paint still on my knife. I already see a nice little shadow there, so I'm not going to kill that at all, but I'm going to go back up here, going to touch this side, and then I'm just going to pull that down. I want a little bit more there at the top, so I'm just going to go up, grab it. And then if you have a little bit of a shaky hand, that's okay. A little roll of paint, and you can start to go in here and really form that mountain any way you see it. I see a little bluer coming down there. There we go. A little more right in there for me. Ooh, look at that. Nice little break coming out there. Beautiful. Can't forget about this peak over here in the background. So I'm just going to grab a little more of that little roll of paint on my palette knife. And then I'm going to go in here, put a little peak back here of some snow hanging out. Just like that for now. All right. Looking good. I'm going to take some of that extra dirty white that I already had over here. And I'll mix me up a little shadow color. I'm going to go with some Prussian blue today into that white. I'm looking for a nice blue reflective color. I'm using Prussian blue today. You could use phthalo blue too. Doesn't really matter much. You get the color of the reflected light that you would like. Just kind of mix it up. Leave it marbled. I'll wipe off my knife. Same idea. Cut off that little roll of paint. And now every peak has to have a shadow. And it's the same idea. I'm going to go up here with the blue and just kind of pull a little shadow in there. Look at that. And man, those mountains and those peaks start to pop. A little shadow back here. Just a little bit. There we go. It comes on down that way just a little bit. Wipe my knife off again. Get my little roll of paint. And this time I'm going to show you the advantage of having a number 5 palette knife, small knife. Helps you get into some of those places. And so I've kind of got my nice big peak in here. But now I need to put a little shadow behind it. And so by using the small knife, I can get in there very delicately and start to put a little shadow behind those. Just like that. A little bit over here. Again, follow your angles. There we go. All right. Back to my white color that I had mixed up with the little bit of bright red in it. Pull that out flat. I'll wipe off the knife so I have a good clean knife to work with. Little roll of paint. And so very few straight lines in nature. So you can go back in and you can just kind of start to shape very lightly. Pull those reflections in. Oops, picked up a little bit of blue there. No big deal. Just go back with a little more white. You can cover that baby right up. Maybe in your world that peak comes on out this way. And just like that, I can make that come right on out. Now it comes up and blends in here a little bit. Always wiping the knife and using a thin roll of paint on the edge. Ooh. And I like it. Starting to look really nice here. So I've got that peak back here now. Back with my blue. Just going to kind of cut across. And I kind of lead a little blue edge down this way. I see a peak right here. Just like that. Just by going in and adding a little color behind those peaks. You can put a whole new range, a whole new peak right there. Just kind of sticks out at you. Just work that knife. All right. Do you think you could do a mountain that easy? Beautiful mountain today. Taking a clean, dry 2-inch brush. Make sure it's good and dry, as Bob says. And then we're just going to tap. Sit my palette down here. Just going to tap. We're going to follow the angles of that mountain. Okay? Just tap so it kind of just blends away, and then lift. You're following the angles of your mountain. And then lift. 2 hairs and some air here, as Bob would say, on the lift part. And you're always following the angles. Very important. And by doing that and lifting, look at that. That mountain just kind of sits into the background. On this side, following the same angles. If you pick a little of the blue up on your brush, that's okay. And you can start to shape a little bit more. And then lift this way. Very lightly. And just like that, we built a beautiful little mountain today. All right. I'm going to pick up that 1-inch brush that already had the lavender color on it. But I'm going to mix up a little bit more with my knife here. So I'm going to take some Prussian blue, little phthalo blue too, little alizarin crimson. Just mixing up. I'm going to take some of my mountain color as well. Mixing up kind of a blue. Go up here, I had some dirty white left on my palette. Going to add that in just to kind of see what color I'm working with. Good, I like that. A little more of my dirty white up here. There we go. Mixing up a nice little light blue color. Spread it out. You're going to need a lot to work with. And then I'm just using that same 1-inch brush that I did the pink and the purples with in the sky. And I'm just going to load that brush. I'm going to pull it in one direction. Wiggle it. Load it good and full of paint. Wiggle. And you're going to build a nice little chisel edge with that brush. You got to have a lot of paint in there. Pull, wiggle, pull, get a nice chisel edge. And then I'm going to put a couple layers of foothills in this mountain today, or this painting today. So my first one, I'm just going to go right here. You're just going to kind of touch and then pull down. Touch, pull down. You want all kinds of little shapes going on back here. Load that brush back the same way. Wiggle, wiggle. And then you can pull another one in there, just like that. And I think they're going to get smaller, smaller, smaller as it goes towards the center of the canvas. Again, that's the depth and the illusion that we're looking for. If everything was the same size, you wouldn't have any depth. You wouldn't have that illusion of depth, which is what we all want in our paintings, especially if you want to make that happy buck, as Bob would say. And I'm just pulling down right now, not caring too much about what happens here at the bottom. All right, got that same clean brush that I used to tap the mountain. I'm going to do the same here. Set my palette down so I can hold my easel a little bit. I'm just using the corner of the brush and I'm tapping down. And you can hear how hard I'm hitting that canvas. And by tapping, I'm putting a little row of mist here at the bottom of this. And then you can just kind of lift up real gently. Take out your brush strokes. We've got a nice little row of trees kind of way off in the distance there. And so I like layers in my paintings. And so I'm going to go back now with that same 1-inch brush, but I'm going to pull in more of the dark color now. I'm just going to mix it on the brush. But I went a shade or two darker just by pulling in some darker colors of the Prussian blue, the alizarin crimson, a little midnight black too. Wiggle that brush. Chisel edge. Now I'm putting in a little darker row of some foothills. And you want that mist. That mist is what's separating these two layers right now. And as things get closer to you, they get darker. It's just going to go off to the side. Really don't care too much where that goes. I've got a nice little trees going on there. Now watch this. Taking the 2-inch brush. I always put my thumb on the number. There's a number 1 or a number 2 on your 2-inch brush. This is a way Bob showed me to do it when we were painting together. You got to think about where your horizon line is, and you want to pull down straight. But I'm going to touch, and I'm going to pull straight down. Touch, pull straight down. Touch, pull straight down. And by doing that, I start to pull in some reflections. I'm going to go back and get just a little more of this color. Make sure I have enough over here. And that really is the joy of painting, right? You start to see things and make them happen on your canvas. And what I did, I realized I didn't have enough shadow over here. So very easily just went back in, add a little bit of that. I'm taking my 2-inch brush, and I'm going back and I'm pulling straight down. The harder you pull, you can make longer reflections. The softer you pull will be smaller reflections. So I'm just going to beat the excess off the brush there, and then I'm going to pull very lightly across. And just like that, I've got some water lines, some reflections way back in the background of this painting. How fun that was. I'm going to reach over here and get another palette knife. So we're going to put a little snow, little water line in there. Bob had a little range of snow in his. So I'm just going to take my palette knife, dip it into a little bit of my liquid white. I'm going to mix it right into that titanium white just a little bit. Need a little more of the liquid white. And all this is doing is thinning it down just a little bit. There we go. So it's liquid white, a little bit of titanium white. Just going to wipe that brush, wipe that knife off. I cut across my little row of paint. And I'm just going to pull in a little bit of snow in this, just a little. Bob had just a little. And by thinning it down, it allows you to pull this a little bit better. So it looks like there's a little bit of ground or a little snow back here on the background of maybe sitting out there on this lake. Just touch and pull. And you can turn it a little bit and start to shape it just a little bit. And just like that, we got us a little ground for those trees to sit on. And I'm going to go the same way as I touch and pull here. And I have a little bit more coming towards us as it gets closer to us. And I'm using that knife the same way as I did the mountain, just cutting off a little roll of paint. And I can go in there and I can start to shape out some little hills. Just like that. doing this at home, you can spend as much time as you want to really shaping out a little bit of some background. All right, I'm going to cut in a water line now. So for that, I am going back into my liquid white. Just going to put that all on my palette. Cut across after I wipe it off. Wipe my knife off, cut across. Got that little row of paint. And now horizontal is important because you don't want the water to run onto your floor. And you got to have these water lines that you cut straight. As I'm teaching my classes at Minnetrista and elsewhere, the Bob Ross Experience, one of the things that my students do sometimes is they don't keep their water lines straight. And sometimes they ask, what's wrong? It doesn't look right. And so we go in and I show them about the horizontal line, literally trying to cut that into the canvas. And in this technique of Bob's wet on wet, you can fix anything. And then shoot, those students cut in a horizontal water line and they're all happy. And that's what we want you to be too, happy as you do this. Shoot, I work in the media, and if I want sad, I watch the news. But I don't like the news. I don't like watching sad. I like happy. And this really gives me a chance to experience happiness in my own little world. Just like Bob said, just like Bob promised. And it's true. It really is. All right. I'm going to cut a little water line out here on the little icy thing out here on the lake here and there. And like that. We've got us in some snow, a nice little background. And I'm going to go back and get just a little bit more on my palette knife. And step back sometimes. That's the other thing. If you're painting, you're this close to the painting, sometimes you just need to step back and take a look at what you've done. And when you look at it from a distance, you really start to see things. There I see I needed a little more of a water line, so I just went in and I fixed it. No big deal. All right, so we've got us a nice little sky, sun shining bright on a nice big old mountain. So now here's your next bravery test. Got to put some pine trees in there, right? It's not a Bob Ross demo if it doesn't have some happy little trees in it. So I'm just taking my number 6 fan brush and pulling it through that dark color I had already mixed up. I still have quite a bit of it left. You want a lot of paint for these trees. So fan brush, dark color, that was Prussian blue, midnight black, a little Van Dyke brown, a little alizarin crimson. Shoot, I'm going to pull in a little more midnight black. Just going to mix it on the brush. A little more Prussian blue. Just going to mix it on the brush. Load that brush full of paint. And wiggle it just like we did in the 1-inch. So you get that nice sharp chisel edge. And now you have to start making another decision where the trees live in your world. And so in my world, I see one that lives right about there. So I tap, I load my brush, and then I'm just using the corner of that fan brush. And just pushing down as I go. See a nice, beautiful little pine tree that lives right in here. The bigger it gets, the more pressure I'm using. There. I'm going to go up and get a little more paint on my brush. And that little pine tree lives right there for now. Same thing, going back, loading my brush. Wiggle it. And I got to have a big old friend right here, right? So that one's going to break way up into the sky. You got to think smaller at the top. A lot of people come in and just start tapping. They get so happy with the tree and they lose the form of the tree at the top. the width of that brush to drop in a little pine tree. It's going to live right in front of that other one a little bit. That's okay. We know he's there. You know he's there. And so we popped out another tree right there. Down here I'm just using the whole brush. I'll go back and get a little more paint on my brush. And I see one more over here. It's just kind of hanging out over here. Maybe it's a mom and a dad pine tree, and they had a little offspring tree here off on the side. Just make up little stories in your mind. Shoot, it's a lot more fun when you think about the stories. Bob was right. That's what I try to do. I'm just using that fan brush and just gonna pop out the rest of a little pine tree down in here. There we go. Yep. Maybe that family, mom and dad, maybe they had a couple kids. So I'm going to put another little pine tree right here. I just love making these, using the corner of the brush and just tapping. And using more of that brush as you come down. And right there we have another little pine tree. Shoot, down here at the bottom, I'm just going to pop in a little land. You could do this with a 1-inch brush. You could do this with a 2-inch brush. I'm going to get a little in here right now just with my fan brush. As Bob said on the show, you could use the bottom of your shoe for this. Let me grab that 1-inch brush. That same dirty 1-inch brush, I'm just pulling it through that dark color. I'm going to pull it all in the same direction, loading the brush. You're going to get a lot of paint on there. And I'm going to turn that over. And now I can go in. Maybe I do have a couple little bushes hanging out down here. And I'm just going in and tapping, loading my brush, pushing and tapping out some shape down here. And then down here, we're just going to fill this all in with a nice dark color. Doesn't matter too much. I remember Bob said, shoot, you could do this with the bottom of your shoe. I don't know about you, but I like my shoes. So we're just going to use the brush today. There we go. Got a nice little thing. I also think maybe on this side, we're going to have a little bush or two. Kind of bring this all together. So again, I'm loading my brush, pulling that paint in the same direction. And I'm flipping it over. Maybe over here, I got a little bush or two sticking out. A little bit of land popping up right there. Kind of like that. You know what? I think in this painting that Bob did, he had the land come all the way across. And so that's the beauty of what you're doing right now. You see it in your eye, see it in your mind, and you can go in and just pop in some little bushes and shapes down in front. It forces your eye to look back in there a little bit, which is awesome. I picked up a little more blue in this one. Just a nice dark color hanging in there, which is awesome. All right. Now you got to think a little bit of where you see some things. So I'm just going to clean my palette knife, give myself a little place to work on my palette. That dark color off to the side. I'm going to pull out a little of the Van Dyke brown, and I'll reach up here and get just a little of the titanium white. A little bit more of the white. There we go. I'm going to lighten that up just a smidge. I'm going to cut my little roll of paint. And then very lightly you can go in and just touch. And you can start to put in a little pine tree trunk. Just touch. May not show up too much on the camera right now, but it does in person. Just here and there. You can wipe that knife off too, and you can go in. Bob always used to make his pine trees. A little tip from by going in, following that same shape of the trunk that you just put in, getting those nice points on those pine trees. Just by cutting them in. Shoot. Go in and push up a few sticks and twigs in there. Those are little things that sell your painting. Make you that happy buck that some people don't have in theirs. All right. So we've got some pine trees in, put a little highlight color on those. I'm going to take a clean fan brush. Let me mix up a little highlight color first. Got that blue that we used on the mountain. I'm going to pick up that. I'm going to get a little more white. There we go. Nice little marbled blue look. Pull that out. Don't want to overmix it too much. Number 6 fan brush. I'm going to dip it into a little liquid white, and then I'm going to pull it through this blue color that I just made. Because the golden rule, right, in this kind of painting, wet on wet painting is a thin paint sticks to a thick paint. And so I'm using that liquid white just to thin down that blue color. And now you have to make some big decisions. Which trees live in front of each other? So I see a little bit on this pine tree in the back. The light's coming from the right because we have the almighty sun right there. So I'm just going to go in and very lightly, same format, same stroke that I made the tree with, but very lightly add a little highlight color. And that tree's in the background. You don't want much. These pine trees need to be mostly dark, right? But there's a little snow hanging on out here on some of these. And using just the corner of the brush, you can pop out a few little highlights. Darker, darker, darker as it goes down. Darker, darker, darker. I can reach in and get a little more of the liquid white. And I think this tree is next, in my world anyway. And so I'm adding a little snow, kind of just on the right side. And it's going to get darker down here as it goes. And then I got the big one standing tall here looking over this mighty mountain, having a good day. Shoot, I'd like to have this scene. I'd like to stand here all day too. Don't kill all your dark though. That's an important part. And it gets darker as it goes down. All right, about like so. Now you can start to think about what's here in front as we make it to the foreground now, which is great. I'm going to clean up another spot on my palette to work with. I'm just going to wipe off that extra paint on a paper towel. I'm going to take a clean 1-inch brush. I'm going to dip it into my liquid white, and then I'm going to pull through my rest of my titanium white that I have in there. A little more liquid white. Thin paint sticks to a thick paint. So I'm pulling that through on that 1-inch brush. I'm going to tap it just to make sure I got some good distribution of that paint first. And then I'm going to pull then again. One direction, loading that. A lot of paint. A lot of paint and a light touch. And now you can start to think about where these bushes live. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to touch, and I'm going to think shape and form. I'm going to drop in some highlights. A lot of paint, a little touch. And right there, I see one coming out. A little more liquid white. And maybe I see one over here that lives right here. And don't just hit as random, as Bob would say, because each bush is different. Each bush has its own personality. So they all should look different. Ooh, that's a nice one right there. I'm going to go around over here, push up a little bit right in there. Now I'm mixing up, getting a little more blue on my brush, so I'm just going to go back and get a little more titanium white. Look a little more liquid white. And then I can go in here and I can just touch and push. The canvas will take what it wants. And it'll give you back what's left. Little trees, little bushes in there. Maybe there's a couple that live over in here. Ooh, look at that. You can use the brush sidewards too, as Bob said. Maybe put little grassy areas there at the bottom. All right. One last test for us here on this happy little painting day. And so I'm just going to take my dirty old fan brush. I'm going to load it full of Van Dyke Brown. So Van Dyke Brown, it was the dirty dark color that I already had, the Prussian blue, the midnight black, and now I'm loading it with a lot of Van Dyke Brown. And so here's another bravery test. I see a tree and it lives right about there. You can do it. Nice dark tree, it lives about right there. And you know Bob, you know me too, every tree's got to have a friend, so it's got a friend that lives right about there. This is just Van Dyke Brown on a fan brush. Pulling in some dark color here at the bottom, just like that. I'm going to reach over here and get a liner brush. Dip into a little of my odorless paint thinner. And then I'm just going to go up and work that liner brush into that brown until it's thin like ink. And load that brush by turning it. There you go, good shot. Load that brush by turning it. And then you have to think about where you see a few little branches and arms that stick off of these trees. Loading that brush. Just kind of turning it as you go. Lift off. When I painted with Bob, we would do tree branches. And he would tell me to lift off. That makes them thinner at the top. Sometimes you saw Bob come in and go this way. And if that works for you, that's okay too. I'm just going to go in here and put a few little sticks and twigs, branches on these trees. If you have the nervous hand, that's where it helps, as Bob says. There we go. Putting on some big old branches on this tree. And don't just think one way. Branches grow out and then they can cross over too, just like that one did. That's nature. going to drop a few more in here. You get the idea. You can do as many, a few of these as you want, as Bob would say. Where the detail comes into play in your painting. That might make it a lot different than someone else's. Shaking on some little sticks, some arms, some branches out here. Shoot, maybe down here's another one. And it lives right out there. He's just growing down here. Got a little baby tree coming out. A few little sticks and twigs down here. Maybe there's one over here. I don't know. Just kind of drop them in wherever you see some branches hanging out. There we go. Kind of like that. Over here, I'm just going to lift up with my brush, put a few little in there. All right, I'm going to go back to that 1-inch brush that I had with the liquid white, the titanium white. And then you can just go kind of in and clean up the feet. There we go. And with that, I think we have a finished painting. So let's sign it. To sign it, I'm taking my liner brush into the odorless paint thinner, and then I am, look at that, you can see that paint running, which is good. That's what we want. You want it thin like ink. Bob always signed in red. I always signed in red. If it's good enough for Bob, it is good enough for me. And so find out where you want to sign it. I'm going to put it right here. I'll go in and sign my name. Like that. And if you happen to listen to the Happy Little Podcast with Ron Scalzo, I always sign my R in my last name to pay honor to the man who inspired me, Bob. And I try to do my R just like Bob did his R. And that's my little way to say thank you to Bob Ross. Hope you've had a fun time with this little painting today. Give you a chance to put a sun in, a nice big mountain, some happy little trees. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again next time. From downtown Muncie in my happy little studio, I'm Chris Taylor saying so long, my friends.
Chris Taylor, a certified Bob Ross instructor with a teaching studio in downtown Muncie, creating landscapes using the wet-on-wet technique. Chris Taylor offers individual lessons for adults and kids. Learn more at christaylorartist.com.